Malik Nabers is an absolute diva, but he's one of multiple receivers that would be a perfect fit for the Tennessee Titans in this year's NFL draft. I'll explain why on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland, Titans fans. Today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. It's wide receiver day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. I'm diving into 20 wide receivers in this year's class. Can't wait to talk about the top options, the mid-round options, some late-round steals available for the Tennessee Titans, and who the best fits are. Before I dive into it, I do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed to the number one Tennessee Titans podcast in the world. We went over offensive tackles yesterday. It's wide receivers today. I'm going to keep going position by position through about 180 to 200 draft prospects before we get to the draft in 2 weeks. So again, make sure that you stay with me here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Throw a thumbs up on the video as well. Show is always free. All I ask for in return is the press of a button. What I want to start out with here is the top wide receivers in the NFL draft. And we know about the big three, okay? You got Marvin Harrison Jr., 6'4", physical, skilled wide receiver, the top wide receiver in the draft. You have Rome Odunze as well, who is another ex-wide receiver, 6'2". I've talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. Everyone knows about Marvin Harrison Jr. I've talked about Rome Odunze multiple times this week. We also have Malik Nabers, though, and Malik Nabers may be an absolute diva, talking about how the Giants shouldn't draft him unless they get a better quarterback and all of that. He's 20 years old, definitely probably needs some maturity, but Malik Nabers is going to be the best fit for the Tennessee Titans out of the top three. And when you listen to Brian Callahan, Titans head coach Brian Callahan had a press conference on Wednesday, and he said, we need someone to emerge in the slot position. Talked about Kyle Phillips, talked about Mason Kinsey, talked about NWI, didn't mention Treylon Burks. But either way, it's clear the Titans want an explosive slot receiver, and obviously Malik Nabers fits that bill. But you guys have all heard about the top three wide receivers in this draft class a ton. So what I wanted to do was dive into the other wide receivers in this class. So first, we got to talk about Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU, Malik Nabers' his teammate, 6'2", 209 pounds. He's only 21 years old, so a ton of potential left. Had a 9.97 relative athletic score, so a freak athlete. He's got great size, great speed. He is a ball winner. He was a former basketball player, and you can tell by the way he jumps up and goes and gets the football. He had 17 touchdowns last year, which was absolutely ridiculous. And he had the best flying 20. Everybody talks about the 10-yard split, the 40-yard dash. The 20 yards in the middle of the 40-yard dash is called the flying 20. At 6'3", 209 pounds, he had the fastest flying 20 of any wide receiver at the combine. So freak speed. Look, Brian Thomas Jr. does not run the best routes. He definitely needs to develop as a route runner with his route craft. Some people wonder, is he ever going to be able to run intermediate routes, to run short routes? He could be just a vertical guy. Also, didn't have a lot of production in his first two seasons. So Brian Thomas Jr. to me is a boom or bust prospect. He could be T. Higgins. He could be DJ Chark. Now, I don't think that he's going to be available for the Titans unless they trade down in the draft, but definitely would be an option if they do move down, 10 picks or something like that. A guy I like even better than Brian Thomas Jr., though, is A.D. Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell from Texas. This is a star player for me. I love Adonai Mitchell. And if the Titans do trade down, or maybe if they move up in the first round, I think Mitchell makes a ton of sense. Out of Texas, also a big, tall athlete at 6'2", 205 pounds. He's also 21 years old. Great relative athletic score. He is going to be your X wide receiver, a guy on the outside in isolated matchups who can win. Great size, great speed, great length. He does have great routes. He runs with great route fluidity, okay, when he's actually trying his hardest. So different from Brian Thomas Jr., Adonai Mitchell is a better route runner. He's got great body control and excellent hands. He's only had one drop last year, so great hands. Look, he hasn't been the most productive guy throughout his college career, though. It took him a while to get to good production. He doesn't really give you yards after catch ability. Like, he's just going to catch the ball and go down. It does remind me of like a T. Higgins type. Hasn't been great against press coverage, hasn't had a lot of experience there. And a lot of his wins have come on double moves, which isn't going to be as common at the NFL level. He's another guy. Is he only a deep threat? He has a tendency to be a little bit lazy with his route running when the ball isn't coming his direction. Is that something that you can coach out of him? Those are things to wonder. But for me, out of Brian Thomas Jr. and Adonai Mitchell, who are very similar players, I like Adonai Mitchell, A.D. Mitchell, a lot better out of Texas. And if the Titans do trade back later into the draft, think about that trade that people have been floating out there with Buffalo, which I don't want them to do. But if they do something like that, I think A.D. Mitchell would make a ton of sense. Some guys who are more likely to be available for the Titans in the second round, though, are guys like Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey, Xavier Leggett, Ricky Pearsall. Those are the names that are going to be there at pick number 38 for the Titans to choose from. So wanted to talk about Malik Nabers, who is the best fit. I don't care if he's a diva. I want wide receivers that are divas. The last diva wide receiver the Titans had is A.J. Brown, and he was the best wide receiver this team has ever had. All right, so I love the fit with Malik Nabers. Again, I'm still taking Joe Alt over Malik Nabers, but Alt and Nabers are my top two realistic options for the Titans at number 7. If they move down, then BTJ and A.D. Mitchell make sense, but I like Adonai Mitchell a lot better than Brian Thomas Jr., in my opinion. Now, again, I think the Titans get a wide receiver in the second round, and we're looking for guys who have the ability to play in the slot, not just a slot wide receiver, but have the ability to play in the slot. And I think there are some great options for the Titans there. I'm going to dive into those names. Before I do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball's in full swing. The Masters is this weekend, starts today on Thursday, or I guess it's Wednesday night if you're watching on YouTube. Either way, FanDuel is the best place to bet on all of that action. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's right, $150. Win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks to birdies, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. It's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Titans fans, let's continue today's breakdown of the wide receiver class in this year's NFL draft. A stacked, elite wide receiver group, and I think the Tennessee Titans have to get one of these top guys with their first couple of picks. We talked about the top 5 wide receivers in the draft in my rankings, Malik Nabers being the best fit for the Titans overall, but now we got to talk about some wide receivers who would be available on day 2 for the Tennessee Titans. Now, some of these guys could go in the first round. Xavier Worthy or, of course, Ladd McConkey or Xavier. These guys could go late in the first round, but they could be available in the second round. And if they are, they obviously make sense for the Titans. Before I dive into it, do want to thank you again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Remember, this is the #1 Tennessee Titans podcast in the world for a reason. So you don't want to miss the rest of our wide receivers and the rest of our draft breakdown series that I'll be going through throughout the next few weeks. But the next wide receiver that I want to talk about here is Xavier Worthy, the speedster out of Texas. 5'11", 165 pounds, 21 years old, a 9.37 relative athletic score. And Xavier Worthy is a Z wide receiver. X wide receiver is your big physical #1 wide receiver. Z wide receiver is your off the line of scrimmage speed guy who can move around the formation. And then, of course, you have your slot wide receivers. So when I talk about these guys in the role that they could play, that's what I'm going to be talking about. Now, a guy like Xavier Worthy could play the Z, but he could also play in the slot if you needed him to. 4.21. That's right, a 4.21 40. Great at deep balls, getting down the field on vertical routes. He is a smooth route runner, folks. A lot of these deep wide receivers that have vertical speed often aren't the smoothest or most refined route runners. Well, Xavier Worthy can run routes. He gives you ability as a kick returner as well. Good yards after catch ability with that speed and shiftiness. He has been productive. All 3 years, he was productive at Texas, starting with his freshman year. Now, the reality is with a guy like Xavier Worthy, you are worried about the size. He's 165 pounds. Is a guy like that going to be able to stay healthy and stand up to the beating in the NFL? Another guy like that had some injury issues is a Hollywood Brown. I would compare Xavier Worthy very much to a Hollywood Brown, or at the top of Deshaun Jackson, who is a little bit bigger, but similar styles of play. When you have a guy that small, they're going to struggle in contested catch situations. He's not going to go up and win a bunch of contested catches, combat catches over guys. He's just not big enough and strong enough. He does struggle with drops at times. It's not an incredibly debilitating issue, but he definitely has had his issue with drops. And again, a guy that small, he's not going to help you in run blocking. So I think he could be a fit for the Titans with what they're looking for. But if he goes in the first round, I'm fine with that because I wouldn't take Xavier Worthy in the first round personally. The next guy I want to talk about, though, is a star prospect for me. And I don't mean he's going to be a superstar in the NFL. I mean he's a great fit for the Titans. I talked about Adonai Mitchell. Now I want to talk about Ladd McConkey from Georgia, 5'11", 187 pounds. He is 22 years old. He could play the Z receiver position on the outside. He could play the slot position. Do not trick yourself into thinking that Ladd McConkey is like Julian Edelman, Wes Welker, Danny Amendola. He's not. Don't pigeonhole him based on the fact that he's a white, or pigeonhole him based on the fact he's a white wide receiver. He has the ability to play on the outside. He played the majority of his snaps on the outside at Georgia. But of course, he has the ability to work in the slot if necessary. This guy is an elite route runner. Excellent pacing, excellent salesmanship on his routes, great zone awareness too, great understanding of where to sit down in coverages. He is a tough catcher of the football. He is not scared to take contact. Strong hands. He has speed vertically as well, though. Ladd McConkey ran a 4.39. He's got more vertical deep speed than wide receivers that people typically associate him with. Great release packages to get off the line of scrimmage, and he has yards after catch ability. He may not be the most elusive yak guy ever. He's no Malachi Corley or anything, but he has the ability to make plays with the ball in his hands. I would compare him to an Emmanuel Sanders, Sterling Shepard, Adam Thielen as guys who can win on the outside, also can win in the slot if necessary. But here's the reality with Ladd McConkey. Injuries. He's had a ton of injuries throughout his career. Also, doesn't play with a lot of strength, doesn't play with a lot of power. He has a tendency to get jammed at the line of scrimmage if guys are physical with him, and he's never gone over 1,000 yards in his career, so it's not like he's an elite production guy. He's not great with contested catches. He's a guy who creates separation, but if you eliminate that separation, he's not really going to beat you over the top or jump over top of you. His size, his weight, only 187 pounds, that contributes to the injury issues. That's something that you do have to worry about with Ladd McConkey, but he gives you so much in other areas. Definitely like what he brings to the table. A guy who I loved at the beginning of the draft process, who admittedly I have soured on, is Xavier Leggett. All right, out of South Carolina, 6'1", We heard that he was 6'3". Turns out he's only 6'1". 223 pounds, and he has small hands, 8.8-inch hands. I mean, that is small for the type of player that you expect him to be. Now, Xavier Legette could be an X wide receiver. I think you could use him in the slot, but this isn't Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks played a ton in the slot in college, and a lot of people compare Legette to Treylon Burks. But Legette played mostly outside in college, so it's not a guarantee that he could play in the slot at the NFL level. The big thing that I want to bring up here is he's 23 years old. So, yes, incredible size, speed combination. He looks like A.J. Brown. He looks like A.J. Brown when you watch him play football. No doubt about it. Xavier Legette looks like A.J. Brown. Yards after catch. He plays with toughness, aggression, good football character from Xavier Legette. In breaking routes, out breaking routes, does a great job. And of course, slants, crossers, drag routes, stuff that A.J. Brown was able to win on a ton. He's a guy who played special teams coverage unit. So again, elite football character, elite football toughness. But his route details, his route craft, not good. Doesn't have a good release package at the line of scrimmage to get all press coverage. His production is a problem. He didn't even have more than 147 receiving yards in any season in college until his final year. And he's 23 years old. So it's fair to wonder, hey, he didn't do crap in college until he was a man amongst boys. He's 23 years old going up against 19-year-olds. And now all of a sudden he's having a breakout year. It definitely creates some issues. He's going to power through guys in yards after catch opportunities, but he doesn't have great wiggle. He's not going to juke guys out. He's not swiveling his hips to make guys miss. And for a guy that big, that strong, he was not good with contested catches, which is why you're worried about the 8.8-inch hands. Again, we talk about how the tape is what matters most. The tape is what matters most. Don't get bogged down in the measurements, the testing. The problem is when the testing matches up with the concerns on tape. I talked about that with Olu Fashanu with his hand size and how his hands are bad on tape. Well, you worry about the hand size with Xavier Legette because he's not good at contested catches and combat catches. So he does give you flashes of Deebo Samuel and A.J. Brown, but there are definitely areas of concern. So I would take him at 38 if the Titans like him. I would be okay with that, but you do have to worry about some of these things. He was a man amongst boys and didn't do crap until he was way older than everybody else. That is reason for concern. It certainly is. The last guy that I want to talk about here is a good option for the Titans in the second round is a player that I really, really like, and it's Ricky Pearsall from Florida, 6 foot, 193 pounds. So he's like Ladd McConkey, but a bigger guy, an inch taller, 6-7 pounds heavier, but he's also a guy who's 23 and a half years old already. He'll be 24 during the NFL season. He's going to be a slot wide receiver, though, and I think that Ricky Pearsall could be a lot like Tyler Boyd. I've seen comps to Chris Olave for Ricky Pearsall. I think that's a little rich, but I think Tyler Boyd, which in Brian Callahan's offensive system, you need a Tyler Boyd type player. So I think that Ricky Pearsall could be very similar to a Boyd. He runs such good routes, folks. Ricky Pearsall runs excellent routes. Not only that, but his in and out footwork, getting in breaking routes, out breaking routes, his footwork is so clean. And he is tough as nails. I think it was a catch against Charleston, but he, in traffic with 3 guys around him, reaches up and makes a one-handed catch and gets smoked. It is maybe the best college football catch I have ever seen. But Ricky Pearsall is so tough, such good hands, great awareness, great release packages. He can be a punt and kick returner. And let me just say it. They called him Slick Rick, Pretty Ricky. He's got swagger, folks. I'll say this. Ricky Pearsall, white boy, but he has soul, okay? And I love that dynamic with Ricky Pearsall. Look, he's slim. He's not a big physical guy. Like, look at Xavier Legette at 220 pounds and then looking at Ricky Pearsall. Definitely a different kind of human being. Definitely a different kind of athlete. So, he's slim, doesn't have strength, not very good at the catch point. Like, again, he's a smaller guy. He's not going to be good winning contested combat catches. He has good, strong hands, but he's not going over the top of people to win consistently. He's got to get better in press, and he's probably going to be a slot-only guy at the next level. I mentioned the age, a man amongst boys. Is that why he was so good last year? It's fair to wonder, but what I would argue is at that age, he's ready to come in right away. He is who he is, and he's going to be comfortable with his role in the system. I think he could be the Titans' Tyler Boyd, and I think that's very important, especially, again, Brian Callahan on Wednesday said, we need someone to emerge at the slot wide receiver position when we're in 11 personnel, which is 3 wide receivers. So DeAndre Hopkins, your X, Calvin Ridley as your Z. Who is going to be your slot? Ricky Pearsall is a great fit, a star player. And again, I don't mean a superstar. I mean a perfect fit for the Titans. Out of these guys, A.D. Mitchell, Ladd McConkey, Ricky Pearsall. I love those fits for the Tennessee Titans. But there are going to be a lot of guys late in the second round. I'm only in the mid-second round in terms of prospects. So many wide receivers to discuss. We're going to talk about mid-round options. We're going to talk about late-round options. We haven't even talked about Troy Franklin, Keon Coleman, Malachi Corley, and, of course, my favorite late-round draft crush, Luke McCaffrey. We're going to get into all of that. Before we do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to level up your vehicle to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Titans fans, let's continue today's breakdown of the wide receiver draft class in the 2024 NFL Draft, diving into the best fits for the Titans, but going over all of the top prospects as well. We've hit, 6 or 7 or 10 guys at this point in the draft. I'm going to dive into the later round guys, but first we got to start with these midday guys, because we got to talk late second round, early third round. I've gone through Marvin Harrison Jr. to Ricky Pearsall. Those are the wide receivers I have mentioned so far are the only guys that I would be comfortable with picking at 7 or 38. Okay. Now, anybody that we talk about going forward is either going to be a later pick or somebody if the Titans trade down in the second round. So the next guy that I want to talk about is a very, very polarizing prospect, and it's Keon Coleman, the physical wide receiver out of Florida State. We've talked about X, Z, slot. Keon Coleman is the definition of an X wide receiver. 6'3", 213 pounds, 32-inch arms. The length, the size, the body control. He's got great body control, former basketball player, good in contested catch situations. He's got great football personality as well. He's a hard worker. He is an excellent, excellent run blocker at the wide receiver position. Strong hands and good production as well. He's been productive since he went to Florida State. He's similar to maybe a guy like Cortland Sutton or a guy like Devontae Parker is who I would maybe compare him to. But look, with Keon Coleman, terrible testing numbers. He had terrible testing numbers during the pre-draft process. Ran like a 4.6 40. Very, very scary. Not a good route runner. Doesn't have good deep speed. And he doesn't get separation. So he's a guy who can win in contested catch situations, but doesn't get separation. And then you look deeper into the contested catch numbers, he only caught 10 of 30 contested catch situations, so not very efficient. So while he does have the ability to do it at his size with his body control and his length, he wasn't very good at it, or it didn't work out very much. So with the testing, the speed concerns, like, it's no wonder that Keon Coleman is falling down draft boards, and I would not take Keon Coleman at number 38. I would need to trade down much later. And with the Titans talking about how important the slot position is for them and how they need someone to emerge, I just don't think Keon Coleman is a very good fit for the Titans unless they want to move somebody into the slot. But his just pure talent, if the Titans drop back to 50, 55, and he's on the board, well, then I would go ahead and consider it. The next guy is another guy who I think has fallen down draft boards, and it's Troy Franklin out of Oregon. Speed, speed, speed. 6'1", 176 pounds, 21 years old. So another guy who very fast, but very skinny and very slight. He could be a Z wide receiver. I don't think he's a slot wide receiver. Think about Will Fuller. Think about Jalen Hyatt from the University of Tennessee. I think Troy Franklin compares very well to Jalen Hyatt. Hyatt's a little more wiggly after the catch, but I think that's a good comparison there. Again, insane speed. He's got long arms, though, which is very important for tracking the ball, diving, making catches. He just has such great tempo on his vertical routes. He doesn't just sprint off the line of scrimmage with his speed right away. Like, Troy Franklin knows how to set up a defender and stack cornerbacks vertically and not go 100% speed right off the line of scrimmage and wait and kind of lull the cornerback to sleep, and then boom, hits the afterburners and you are cooked, ladies and gentlemen. But again, like what we talked about with Xavier Worthy, like I talked about with Jalen Hyatt last year, thin, slight, okay? And you worry about injuries. You worry about contested catch situations. Can he play through physicality at the NFL level? I don't know. He's very slight, very thin, okay? He doesn't play with great agility either. He's more of just a straight line, linear athlete. So he doesn't have the wiggle of a Xavier Worthy. And after the catch, that limits things. He's route limited. All right, he's not a guy who's going to win over the middle of the field, intermediate route, stuff like that. He is a deep threat, period. That's it. And I just don't think that's a great fit for what the Titans are looking for. The next guy I want to mention here is Malachi Corley. And I know that Malachi Corley has a ton of fans out there, okay? Western Kentucky, 5'10", 207 pounds, 22 years old. He is a slot wide receiver, a gadget slot wide receiver. And a lot of people compare him to Deebo Samuel, all right, because he is known as the Yak King. And make no mistake about it, he is like a running back when he gets the ball in his hands. And that is similar to Deebo Samuel. But I think he might be more Amari Rodgers than Deebo Samuel, all right? Yes, the Yak, change of direction. Physical run blocker, too. He's willing to stick his nose in there. Good on double moves as well. But he does not run good routes. He had a very limited route tree. He's not running a professional route tree in college. Contested catches are a no-go for him at his size because he's got small hands and short arms. He has no experience against press coverage, and he's not good at tracking the deep ball. He is literally a guy you got to give the ball to him around the line of scrimmage and let him run. And that's just not enough versatility for me to be high on Malachi Corley. The next guy is Roman Wilson from Michigan. And with what the Titans said about needing someone to emerge out of the slot, Roman Wilson could be a good fit for the Titans. I also love the little nugget. His father is very interested in Roman culture. No, I'm getting him confused with Roma Dunze. Sorry, scratch that, reverse it. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But anyways, Rome Wilson reminds people of Tyler Lockett. Like, I checked 5 different comparisons from 5 different websites, and they all said that Roman Wilson was like Tyler Lockett. So there must be something there. But 5'10", 186 pounds. He's about to be 23 years old. He plays in the slot, okay? Explosive player. Great agility in breaking routes, out breaking routes, good hands, coming from the Michigan program. As much as I hate Michigan as a Buckeye, tough, smart, hard worker. Like, he is a football character guy through and through, and that's very important. He was so electric at the Senior Bowl. I think that Roman Wilson would be a great fit with the Titans. But again, I'm not taking him at 38. We're talking about a trade back. Maybe if they pick up a third-round pick in a trade back, you take Roman Wilson there. That's where I would be comfortable because he's small. He's just a small guy. He needs to work on tempoing his routes and not going 100 miles per hour the whole time. Doesn't have a lot of experience against press man. Not going to give you much yards after the catch, which out of a slot guy, little concerning for me. Needs to work on his release packages at the line of scrimmage because, again, not a ton of experience against press coverage. And he was in the Michigan offense, which people will tell you, oh, he's capable of so much more because he was in the Michigan offense and they didn't really let him play ball. But maybe not. That's a projection. That's not confirmed. So that's something to consider. The next guy is Jalen Polk. I love Jalen Polk. Now, we're talking about the 4th round here. Okay, I'm talking 106. Or if the Titans get a pick in the 80s for Jalen Polk. I'm not taking him any higher than the 80th pick. But out of Washington, 6'1", 203 pounds, 22 years old, can play the X, can play the Z, can play the slot. That's the type of versatility that the Tennessee Titans are looking for. He reminds people of like a Josh Palmer for the Los Angeles Chargers. Great hands. I mean, he is catching everything, folks. Great hands. Body control. Basically, all of like the intangible things of playing football, all of like the mental awareness, tough, physical, body control, hand-eye coordination, focus, playing multiple positions along the offense, all 3 levels. He can win deep. He can win intermediate. He can win underneath. Like, he gives you everything. Great tempo on his routes. He ran a 4.5 40, so he's not the blazing speed athlete that some of these other guys are. But with the way he tempos his routes, it makes him faster than what his times are. He's a willing blocker. Again, in and out routes. 3 levels. He's not a freak athlete. He doesn't have insane size. He doesn't give you a ton yards after the catch. He doesn't play with incredible physicality or anything like that. But he is just a solid, smart, dependable wide receiver. And I think he would be a great, great fit for the Titans 80 or later. I do want to take a quick moment and say this to you guys because there are names that I'm not going to mention. Johnny Wilson, the 6'7" wide receiver out of Florida State. Not interested. Malik Washington out of Virginia, 5'8", already 24 years old. Not interested. Tez Walker out of North Carolina. Terrible route runner. Doesn't have good agility. Just a deep linear threat. Not interested. And then Jermaine Burton, who has been described as a head case. All right. He's played at 6 schools in 8 years. Had issues with his coaches at every stop. Throw a punch at a fan at a game one time. He just has bad football character. I'm not telling you that Jermaine Burton is a bad person. I'm telling you he is bad football character. All right? So those are no-goes for me. Those guys right there. Jacob Cowing is another guy. 5'8", 160 pounds. Great speed, but just so small. I'm out on those 5 wide receivers. I'm not even going to talk about them. I just mentioned them so you know, but I'm out. I'm out on those guys. But moving into day 3, we're talking 5th, 6th, 7th round are the only places I'm taking these guys. Brendan Rice out of USC. I saw somebody in the chat earlier talk about Brendan Rice in the 2nd round. What are you talking about? All right. Okay. This is why you listen to the show. Okay. Because Brendan Rice ain't going on day 2. What are you talking about? Okay. Anyways, I like Brendan Rice though. Out of USC, 6'2", 212 pounds, 22 years old. He can play the X. He can play the Z. He is an outside receiver. He's not going to play in the slot. So this would be the Titans already got somebody who they think can play in the slot. And then this would be depth on the outside in Brendan Rice. All right. But speed, great speed. He's a smart route runner, which it's Jerry Rice's son. He's probably going to be a smart football player. Good against press coverage, physical against press coverage, which at the NFL level, you see a lot more press than you do at college. That's important. He's got good hands. He's got smart eyes as well. Very important there. The problem is he doesn't have great strength. For a guy who's 6'2", doesn't win contested catches, doesn't give you a lot yards after catch. He's got good speed, but not great acceleration. and he's not really good against zone. You would think that he would have better awareness against zone coverage. So if you're not good in contested situations, which are going to come in man coverage, and you're not great at finding holes in the zone, again, he's a day 3 prospect. Brendan Rice, I would like him as a second wide receiver if the Titans added someone else earlier on. Moving forward, though, Jalen McMillan is another guy who makes a ton of sense. Washington, 6'11", 197 pounds, 22 years old. He is a slot wide receiver. Excellent route runner. Excellent. Has good size and strength for a slot wide receiver. Maybe not an outside guy, but for a slot. Creates excellent separation, and that is key. He's a hands catcher. Not a lot of slot guys like Kyle Phillips, like, the traditional slot guy you would think of, small, quick, all that. A lot of those guys are body catchers. They let the ball get into their body. Not Jalen McMillan. He is a hands catcher, but he's slim. He doesn't give you much yards after catch. He doesn't run a full route tree. At Washington, they did not run an NFL route tree, okay? It was a vertical air raid offense. So he doesn't have a lot of history against press coverage, being in the slot, and he has so many drops. 12 drops. I mean, that's crazy, okay? That's crazy. Not a contested catch guy. People get into his body and give him physicality. He's going to drop the ball, all right? He's not going to win those situations. So, again, we're talking about a day 3 guy. A guy I really like is Javon Baker, though. I love me some Javon Baker. He could play the X. He could play the Z. He could play in the slot. He's played all of them. Great size at 6'1", 202 pounds, 22 years old. Yards after catch ability. He's so good. Yards after catch. He's an athlete, man. You could tell when he's on the field that he is a better athlete than everybody else. Body control, long arms to win in contested catch situations. He's so competitive. He creates big plays. Javon Baker is a big play wide receiver, a ton of plays of 20 yards or more. The problem is this dude drops the ball all the time. He has more drops than touchdowns. Did you hear that? More drops than touchdowns in his college career. Javon Baker didn't do anything until he left Alabama, had to go to UCF. Doesn't run good routes. He's a lazy route runner. He really needs to improve on that. And again, lazy. If the ball isn't coming to him, Javon Baker isn't going to run his route hard. You see that with A.D. Mitchell as well. There are guys that do that, and you hate to see that. All right. So drops are a major issue with Javon Baker, but if he cleans it up and he focuses more, just play harder, Javon Baker. He could be like, this could be, I don't want to say this year's Puka Nacua because they play differently, but this could be a guy who goes late round 3, round 4, and turns into a stud. All right. So I love Javon Baker, even with the drops. He just needs to focus more. He just needs to focus more. But anyway, moving forward, you guys have heard the name. I've talked about him a ton. Luke McCaffrey. I love Luke McCaffrey in the 5th or 6th round. From Rice, former quarterback. Yes, it's Christian McCaffrey's brother. Former quarterback, transferred into being a wide receiver the last 2 years. 6'1", 202, 23 years old, a slot wide receiver, period. He will be a slot, but he could be a big slot like Tyler Boyd. Great at the catch point, really tough going up in traffic and catching the football. Contested catches, great zone awareness. He understands. He was a quarterback, so he understands zone coverage, okay? Great size, good athlete. He doesn't have the nuances of a wide receiver, though. Doesn't work back to the quarterback, like 16 interceptions when throwing at him because he doesn't work back to the ball. He doesn't have great route craft. He's really got to work on the nuances of route running. He doesn't create great separation against man coverage either, so he needs to be good in contested catch situations. Hasn't dealt with a ton of press coverage and doesn't have great vertical speed. He does not have good vertical speed. He is more quick than he is fast. Hasn't played on special teams either, and with where he's going to be drafted, he's going to have to. The last wide receiver that I want to talk about is Jamari Thrash. Out of Louisville, 5'11", 188, 23 years old, great acceleration on his routes, good against press coverage, good yards after catchability, good deep speed, just not good with contested catches. Really disappointed with his testing at the combine. has focus drops. He just doesn't seem to be locked in. And another guy with no special teams experience, when you're getting drafted in the 5th, 6th, 7th round like Thrash is going to be drafted, you better learn to play special teams at the NFL level, or you're not going to be on a roster for very long. So those are the guys that I like. Those are the guys that I think fit. Those are the top wide receivers in the draft class. Hope you guys enjoyed this extended break. I mean, I went 40 minutes today. My bosses are already knocking at my door, ready to reprimand me. So I got to get out of here. But that is a major breakdown of the wide receiver position. I'm going to have a film breakdown on the top wide receivers coming out next week on the Tic Tac Titans YouTube channel. But that is going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I'm your host, Tyler Rowland, and this is Locked On Titans.